Hello, I'm Rebecca. I'll be your examiner today. Could you please tell me your name?
Yes, my name is Lara.
Thank you so much. Let's start by discussing your home village, town, or city. So the first question is, describe the town, village, or city where you live.
So at the moment, I live in Liverpool. I moved to Liverpool 7 months ago, so I don't know much about the city, but I love to walk around and explore. It's full of music venues. I like music. It's full of galleries and things to see, and very cool people. So I'm really enjoying it.
What's the most interesting part of your town, village, or city?
I would say my favorite and most interesting part of Liverpool would be I like this area, the Baltic area, and I also like to walk by the by the river, by the water.
What kind of jobs do people do in your city?
In Liverpool, people do all sorts of jobs. I am myself a yoga teacher, so I've met a few yoga teachers, and I've also met quite a few creative people as well, like DJs and musicians.
Do you think your city is a good place to live?
Yes, I think it's a really nice place to live. People are very friendly.
Now let's talk about your phone. How often do you use your phone?
I use my phone too much. I think I should use my phone less.
What do you use it for?
I use my phone for many different things. I use maps a lot because, again, I don't know the city that well. So I still need to rely on my phone to move around. I use it to talk to my friends and family because I've only moved up here recently. So I don't have many friends. So I talk to my friends elsewhere quite a lot. And I use it for work a lot. So to find jobs and opportunities.
Do you ever turn your phone off?
I only put it on airplane mode overnight, so I don't get, so nobody disturbs me when I'm trying to sleep.
Could you live without your phone?
I don't think so.
Finally, let's talk about technology here. Do you find that technology helps you to be more productive in your daily life?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I think access to the internet and social media is exciting, but it's also really easy to drown into content and stuff that's not necessarily helping me to be more productive with my day-to-day life.
Is there a new piece of technology you'd like to try soon?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to think. Be nice to have. It's not really new, but it'd be nice to have the sort of like smart controls for your house with lights and heating. But where I live is everything is old, so I couldn't install it anyway.
Are there any new technologies that you've started using recently?
I think the only new technology that I can think of is AI. I don't use it a lot, but I have used it for some work bits when I was still working full time.
All right, thank you. In part two, I'd like you to talk about this topic for 1 to 2 minutes. There you go. Before your talk, you will have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say, and that 1 minute is also to make notes. All right, you now have up to 2 minutes to talk about this. You may begin.
Okay. So there is a book that I read recently that I really loved, and it's Just Kids by Patti Smith. I think I was already very happy to read it because it was a special gift. But the book itself was really, really good. It talks about, it's a personal story. So it talks about the story of Patti Smith when she moved to New York as a very, very young soul trying to find her way in life. And she was struggling a lot. She didn't have any money. She was sleeping on the streets and she didn't really know anyone. And the story develops through her struggles, but also she manages to meet someone who's going to change her life forever, someone that she initially falls in love with. This is Rob. And they have a very peculiar and quite intense love story. And then through a number of events, they end up staying really, really good friends, but not being together, but they're still connected by this incredible love and passion for art and support for each other's projects and support for each other during different struggles that they have to face whilst trying to find their own path in New York City. And I think I found this book really interesting because of how raw and how full of emotions it was. But at the same time, it was written in a very immediate and direct way. And it was really, really easy to relate to some of the things that Patti Smith talks about in the book, even though I haven't lived in New York or I haven't struggled as much as she has. And yeah, I really enjoyed reading it. It went really, really quick.
Thank you so much. What kind of things do you usually read?
I tend to read stuff that relates to music because that's my main interest. So autobiographies or just anything that's got to do with either subcultures or different music genres or record labels or artists that I'm really into.
Thank you. What kind of books are most popular these days?
I think probably novels are still the most popular books. I think novels, especially when they talk about life and relationships and stuff that's easy to relate to, are probably the most prominent books and the most liked ones.
When is the best time to read books?
I like to read books before going to bed, which is probably not a very good idea because I fall asleep quite quickly. But it's a nice way for me to slow down and don't look at my phone.
Do you think everyone should learn to read in English?
Oh, definitely. I think it's really good for anyone to exercise their brain in that way. And it's really, really good. It's been really useful for me to learn new words and new ways to use them.
Why might reading become less important in the future?
Reading becoming less important in the future. I think rather than less important, I think it's going to be less frequent. We'll just consume texts in a different way. And I think we already do. I think the habit of reading a book is something that not every generation will keep.
How can people be encouraged to read more often?
Well, obviously, I think school plays a big part. So if kids growing up are sort of like invited rather than forced to read books, they can also find pleasure in doing so. And I think it's all about explaining how incredible it is to get immersed in the world of a book, whether it's a book or a movie or a song. That's the beauty of people creating.
Why do some people still prefer to read books on paper rather than an electronic screen?
I am one of them. I think I like to hold a book and I like to have the book for myself or give it to someone after I finish reading it. It's something that I've done before.
What are the benefits of reading on a screen?
Obviously, easy access. Even if you leave the house with your phone only, you can read. It doesn't matter where you are, and you can access so many books and so much content. Obviously, if you had one book, physical book, that would be it. So, yeah.
How long should people spend reading each time they read?
Oh, I think it's a personal thing, but I think it's nice if you can sort of like progress a little bit every day. Sometimes some books you just want to binge read them and finish them in 2 days. And that's actually really good. That means that the book is really good. But it's also nice to save a little bit for each day.
How can society encourage people to keep reading deeply rather than just scanning information online?
That's tricky. Once again, I think school plays a big part. So we can just hope and work on the next generations. And I think school and families as well, households play a big part in this.
Thank you. That is the end of the test.
Thank you.
Right. So, Rebecca, you just did a speaking test with Lara, and I think it went very, very well.
I agree.
Safe to say Lara is a top scoring student, very, very high scores in all 4 of the criteria there. What I wanted to do now was just go through some of the things she did really well, maybe point out some things she could have done differently, so that other students can maybe learn from this. So let's start with, let's go through each part. It's probably the best way of doing it. Part 1, I thought she did really well. She was able to give very quick responses to the questions. I mean, part 1 questions are often quite boring, aren't they? They're,
very predictable.
What do you do with your phone? It's not the most interesting conversation topic in the world, but I think Lara did a really good job at improvising answers, thinking of something she could say. There are a few cases where I'd say that her answers were too short and she could have elaborated more. So one example would be, do you think you use your phone too much? She said, I use my phone too much. I should use my phone less. Fantastic sentence. Great answer. There's the opportunity for elaboration there. Maybe if I were in her position, I would maybe add steps she might take to use her phone less. I'm really reaching for possibilities here, but this is the kind of thing you need to do when you're practicing. Maybe when you say, I use my phone too much, you could give examples of situations. When I'm lying in bed at night and I'm trying to get to sleep, sometimes I find my phone distracting and half an hour goes by and I'm still scrolling through whatever.
That's the position that a student wants to be in, right? Just being interrupted by the examiner because they've said too much. But when the examiner is still looking at you, it means they might be expecting something more, a little bit more.
Definitely. It's unusual because in conversation, we don't always elaborate on every sentence we say, but the IELTS speaking test is an opportunity to do that. There was another question where I think you asked, could you live without your phone? And her answer was, I don't think so. I would then expect an elaboration beyond that. One thing which I think some people watching this might be curious about is in part 1 and part 3, there were points where you asked a question and Lara hesitated for a long pause, and then she started her answer. Some students have questions about this. This is actually not as bad a thing as people might think. It's actually a very good thing. What Lara is doing is she's contemplating the question, thinking about what she wants to say, and then she's beginning an answer which is well developed and very well expressed with a good range of grammar and vocabulary. It's much better to pause at the beginning and then give a very well-developed answer than to constantly be stopping and hesitating. Because what that tells an examiner is that pause is content related. It's not language related. She's not struggling with the grammar and vocabulary. She's just thinking of ideas of what to say.
Exactly. At no point did she misunderstand anything. That was clear. And it's actually okay to take a few seconds to marshal your thoughts on any given question or topic. It's exactly what we talked about on a previous episode, using natural hesitation strategies. They're part of the exam.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing I thought she did really well was being willing to go off on a tangent. What I mean by that is she's able to say something and then give a related point that wasn't in the question, but it's a natural part of conversation. So you asked her to describe Liverpool, and she talked about the fact that it's full of music venues, and then she said that she likes music. You didn't ask her about her interests, but that's a natural development of the conversation. So that kind of extension of ideas is absolutely fantastic. Moving on to part 2. I thought her part 2 was absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely.
One of the best ones I've heard. It helps when it's a topic that you're interested in, but it doesn't have to be. She could have invented all of that information. Maybe her friend had read that book and she was repeating what her friend had told her. That's absolutely possible. I don't think that's true in this case. She's clearly very interested in the life of Patti Smith. The range of language and the idiomatic expressions in part 2 were phenomenal. So things like it's a personal story. She was a young soul trying to find her way in New York, sleeping on the streets, raw and full of emotion, easy to relate to. All of these kind of little expressions in English which wouldn't necessarily translate perfectly into other language. That's what makes it an idiomatic expression. She's clearly very familiar with this descriptive, slightly more poetic way of describing, a rock and roll figure's life.
I think that only comes from an avid reader, and you could tell, and it illustrated our previous point very well. Be passionate about what you're talking about. You can always find something that you're passionate about. Even if it's complaining about something, you can still do it passionately. And it was just such a pleasure to see that in action.
If the topic is books and you hate books, talk about how much you hate books and how much you prefer movies. There's always a place to put your passion in there. There was also, it's not just vocabulary, there's some good grammatical structures. So she's using things like concessions. Even though I haven't lived in New York, it sounds like a simple sentence, but actually we've got a concession clause in there. We've got present perfect. That's the type of thing that just demonstrates your familiarity and comfort with using English. Got to do with, I love that. That's an example of you can only really use those phrases if you're very familiar with native English speech, like to do with, meaning related to or about that topic. It's not an easy one, so you can't learn that from a dictionary very easily. So really good. Moving on to part 3. Really good. Obviously, she's developing her answers a lot more than she was in part 1, which is what we would hope to see in part 3. Again, very good range of grammar, very good range of vocabulary. If I had to give any recommendation, I'd maybe say try to use or practice more synonyms for I think. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say she quite overused it, but there's space for things like I reckon, I guess, I suppose. There's lots of different ways of saying that. One thing I haven't mentioned is pronunciation. Lara's pronunciation is absolutely fantastic. But it comes across most in connected speech. She's clearly someone who has used English a lot, probably in a native English-speaking country, which we know is true. But things like, there was a phrase she used, it doesn't matter where you are. Mm. Now, the way that's pronounced with connected speech, it doesn't matter where you are. There's no space in between those words. And she's using that w in between you are, which again indicates her familiarity with stringing words together and not pronouncing them separately. There's often lower level students will pronounce these words separately, or perhaps they will put syllables in between them, like will pronounce these words, whereas she's putting them together, turning it into an utterance rather than separate words. So yeah, in all 4 categories, I think Lara's performing very well.
I would agree. And one final comment about your suggestion to use alternatives to, I think I had an obsession with this as a teacher. So every second lesson I had with a particular group of students who would always tell me, I think, we would start the lesson with a game or some sort of competition. They had to come up with as many alternatives to, I think, as possible within the shortest space of time possible. So they got really good at this. And then, interestingly, they actually got rid of, I think, they would only use, as far as I'm concerned, and I believe, and so forth. So it was quite an achievement to get to that point.
For sure. That sounds like a good activity. All right.
Great.